Hello to everyone, to another edition of Faith Greater Than Fear. You know, we started these almost a year ago, and it was a very unprecedented time. And we had the opportunity with my colleagues here at GNPI, Good News Productions International, to interview people of faith, both locally here in Joplin, Missouri, where our office of GNPI is located, as well as other places around the state and the country and even around the world. And since then, we in this year have continued to do a fresh interview like this one once a month. And then we also have kind of a repackaged one, and we hope you're still staying tuned and enjoying them. Today, I've got a very special guest and a friend of mine, Doug Lawson. Doug, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Doug is from right here in Joplin. He's a longtime resident here now. He's served on the city council, influential leader, man of God. And we're just going to chat with you, Doug, a little bit. Tell our audience just a little bit about your history of how you've just been in service for all your years, just so we have kind of a running understanding of your life.
Sure. Well, I was born, of course, in Joplin, Missouri, and graduated high school here, went to Missouri Southern State College, which is on the other side of town from Ozark Christian College. The story, you know, a prophet in his own town, maybe that applied to me because I went to the state university. I was a student there for about 2 years and enlisted in the Navy Reserve, and they sent me to Vietnam. I spent a year there, returned, went back to college, and got involved in the campus ministry at Missouri Southern. And it was there that I was challenged to ministry, and having had a mostly positive experience in the military, I determined that, God willing, I would be a chaplain in the Navy. And graduated from Missouri Southern, went to Emmanuel Christian Seminary in Johnson City, Tennessee, called the Navy and said, I'm ready to go on active duty as a chaplain. And they said, well, you need some pastoral experience. So somebody needed to make the sacrifice, and I ended up preaching at a little church in Hawaii for 3 years. Then the Navy invited me to come on active duty, and I spent 25 years active duty with the Navy, then returned to Joplin, and immediately started working part-time with the local hospital here in Joplin. I also, during that time, taught a couple of years at the high school level at College Heights Christian School in their Bible department. And I also ministered with the Seneca Christian Church for 5 years. Ultimately, I became the director of pastoral care at Freeman Hospital, and that ended about 3 years ago.
So ministry and pastoral care have been very big pieces of your life, your heart. It's taken you around the world. That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about the last year. How's life been for Doug and family regarding COVID as we start to look at it slowing down, vaccination rates coming in? How did you all do as a people of faith?
We did well. Our family managed to escape the illness. You know, we may or may not have been exposed to it, but none of us ever needed to take the test. Neither of us were. And my wife and I were positive. Our extended family, we have a son in Florida, a daughter in Fort Worth, Texas, and a son in his family in Norman, Oklahoma, and none of them ever suffered for it. So for us, it's been mostly an inconvenience. So
that's definitely what a lot of us have.
Well.
Yeah. So served on various church staffs, have been involved in later years here, as I mentioned earlier in our program, city council. That's got to be a tough road. What was maybe one of the toughest things to make a decision on during COVID as a member of city council of Joplin?
Well, the biggest issue that we wrestled with is, do we close the city down? How much do we close the city down? Do we require people to wear masks? I've always been somewhat leery of imposing mandates on the citizens. But Thankfully, there are 9 members of the city council. I'm just one. And there were times when I voted to not have masks, and I was outvoted. But thankfully, I think Joplin did relatively well as compared to the rest of the country. And members of the city council, even though we may not have agreed on what steps to take, every one of us was and is concerned about the welfare of our community.
And that's a good point. I think all of us need to remember, whether we are in decision making at a school level, at a city council level, legislative level, legal level, everyone at the end of the day is only looking out for the best interests 99.9% of the time for everyone. And nobody wants a pandemic. Nobody wants anyone to perish. Nobody wants to have them lose a job. And sometimes we just get a little too involved and would forget those kind of things. And so as we continue to live in a pandemic, and March is coming upon us, there's spring in the air, there's hope. And for us as Christians, hopefully we've been that kind of givers of hope during this season. One of the things I want to talk and take some time, Doug, to talk about with you is your passion in the care of ministers and the care of people, this whole thing of pastoral care. I know that you have a clinical pastoral education that you are involved in. Unpack that a little bit for our audience, would you?
Okay, clinical pastoral education has been around for right at 100 years. And the first people involved in CPE, as we shorten it, were involved in psychiatric hospitals. And the medical personnel and some pastors determined that they needed better training, they needed some hands-on training, and they need to unpack the things that occur in that. And first people in CPE would serve at a mental hospital as orderlies, not as chaplains, because chaplaincy was something brand new at that time. But in fact, I did 25 years as a chaplain in the Navy, never having had clinical pastoral education. I encountered it on occasions, but never had the opportunity to participate. When I returned to Joplin, the local, Spring River Christian Village at the time had a CPE program. And so after over 25 years of experience in ministry, I decided to prepare for it and took clinical pastoral education there and took 4 units. Each unit is 400 hours. That's 300 hours of on-hands ministry and 100 hours of processing with a group, with a supervisor, teaching and reflection on what you've done the previous week.
So why? I just think it's going to be a growing, continued need. I know a church down in Phoenix, rather large church, they just recently in the last month made news raising $2 million for specifically this mental health care of people in the greater Phoenix area. Wow. The people who are pastoral, who are on staff, are the ones who are the caregivers to the need. And so who's caring for the caregivers? So tell us a little bit about how you see what you have had training in and are training others. What would you be willing to do with our audience? How can you help in this ripple effect of COVID right now for those in leadership?
I would certainly encourage anybody. And as I said, had been in ministry for well over 25 years. And when I took it, and I would encourage anybody to consider involving themselves in clinical pastoral education. You don't have to be the pastor of a church. You don't have to be a male or a female. It's wonderful for those in Stephen's ministries or elders, or when I took it, I had a licensed professional counselor, was not even part of a church staff at that point. But the opportunity to reflect, the big thing about CPE is it's action, reflection, action. You do something, and then with the group and with the supervisor, you together reflect on what you've done in ministry. And then you go back to ministry, and hopefully you've honed your skills a little bit during that process. One of the things we discover is we never quit learning. We never attain that level of perfection that we would like to think we have. Even the people that write the books will admit that they haven't figured it all out yet. So it's a matter of we're not just preaching, but we're practicing our theology, and then we reflect it.
And that's so important. I appreciate that, because as we've been in lockdown and coming out of the pandemic, there's been a lot more opportunity for many of us to be distanced from other people and to reflect on, as followers of Christ, how is my followership of Jesus doing? How am I doing in leading in my family if so situated? How am I doing in my community? What does my local church look like when it can't gather on Sundays and can't have the kind of collaborative, cooperative meetings they had? And yet we haven't died spiritually. As a matter of fact, we're supposed to be able to thrive. And this is a tool in this act and reflecting and go out and act again, I think, at a time when we have a lot of reflecting going on by a lot of people because of a lot of loss and a lot of change. So in your view, you said everyone should have it. What would be practical steps on how to get it? How would you suggest they get this?
It's not the only organization. I'm a member or a supervisor with the Clinical Pastoral Education International, CPEI, and Clinical Pastoral Education International.org, I believe. And but you could look that up. And we are affiliated with the American Association of Christian Counselors. They don't work for us, we don't work for them, and yet we have I guess you call it a fraternal relationship with that organization, where you can go to their website and you can enroll in CPE through them, or give me a call. I'll do what I can.
We'll definitely put in the show notes the org that he mentioned and phone number, Doug, if that's all right, your name. The opportunities that we have as followers of Christ, you and me both, to just, as I hear you describing it, of becoming just better listeners, more attuned to our spirits, more attuned to our neighbors and their spirits and what they're feeling and what they're doing, and just learning to be a better listener, a better processor, so that life is more significant. In your experience of travel, pastoral care, and coming out of COVID, what parting words of wisdom could you give our audience today? Great wise one.
Well, I think you hit on it when you talk about listening, hearing. Too often we, instead of actually listening while somebody's talking, we're trying to develop an answer. We're trying to figure out how we're going to fix that person, and we've never actually heard that person. And that's one of the key aspects of clinical pastoral education is hearing. There was a psychologist a number of years ago named Carl Rogers. He's not always in favor of the Christian community, but talked to another chaplain once, and he says, what Rogers did for us was get the preachers to shut up and listen. And it's a matter of, do I actually hear them? Am I paying attention to what their words? Am I paying attention to their demeanor? Am I paying attention to what's going on around them, to where I can actually hear? And part of CPE is not just hearing that person that we work with, perhaps in our congregation or in the hospital. but it's to hear ourselves. What am I telling myself? Where did that come from? And finally, what does God have to say to me in all of this? Too often we read all the books and we become experts, and we sort of put God off to the side. And a good CPE program should put God right there in front.
All right, good words. And we have an ability as human beings to, number one, think that the problem is all about us and that the world should revolve around us. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's that we are not in control. I know my brother, Sergei Golovin, said, now we know that we don't know. We don't know about tomorrow. Now we see with wisdom from the book of James that we should be praying and stating such, if the Lord wills, I will go into such and such city and I will do such and such. Mm-hmm. And many of our plans were drastically changed in 2020 and up to the present time as we chat. So Doug Lawson, thank you for your time. Appreciate you, appreciate what you're doing in our community in so many ways. And we'll definitely put in our notes how to get a hold of you. And for those of you, if you have a heart and have a gift for listening and for being more pastorally oriented, please, now is the time more than ever that probably your family, your community, your church family, your neighborhood needs you to be out and significantly listening and caring and pastorally caring. So Doug Lawson, thank you. To all of you, if this has been something helpful, we hope you'll share it on your social media channels. And it challenges all of us to be better, I hope. And so we have a podcast version of this as well. And so as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that we will have this fresh one offered. It'll be released in a couple of weeks. And then after that, we will have some highlights. So you don't want to miss those as well from those we've done in years past. So from myself, Mike Schrage here at GNPI in Joplin, Missouri, and Doug Lawson, we wish you a wonderful and blessed day. Thank you. Bye-bye.